Hi, I'm Jay Harwood. Another edition of Amazing Conversations with my longtime friend Kevin Kierst. In his 33rd year with the Mets, 13 as a head equipment manager with the Mets. Kevin, you know what? We did the old timers again last year.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the scenes, people don't realize how much part you were with helping me get through that. How much of a work feeling of joy. 65, 66 players getting a uniform, shoes. I wouldn't have done it without you, that's for sure.
It was a challenge right from the beginning because, as you know, I know many of the players from the days that they played, and now they're a little bit older and their sizes aren't the same. And so the challenge was to, without seeing most of them, to try to get the correct size jerseys and pants. Obviously, we asked them about shoes and things like that, but that was the biggest thing. And then as you know, we were going along, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that. So we were adding items to the list as well.
Let me tell you, you guys helped make it a real professional thing. We wanted to do it the right way. We had a great locker room set up. We had gift bags, we had food. And your ideas, I mean, how was it for you? Someone's been in the organization for a long time. Was it good for you to see all these guys?
Yes. Absolutely. I think it was a great thing that we did. I think it was a great thing that we did it the way we did it. First class all the way. And that's a tribute to obviously ownership and our senior leadership with the Mets. We really did go above and beyond, I think, what we originally even planned for, which was pretty good. After going through and kind of going back and forth, I think we did a better job at the end of the day than we originally thought we were going to do.
Can I ask a mundane question? How many different uniforms do we have now?
Right now we have 4. We have the home pinstripe, we have the alternate blue, the alternate black, and gray.
And so black is Friday. Like who decides is it a rotation? Is it a joint decision by a lot of people?
Well, right now we only wear gray on the road. But at home, obviously we wear black on Friday. And then the starting pitcher generally lets us know what they would prefer to wear, and then we go with that.
Most clubs, the Mets have a lot of up and down recently. You have to keep stock of what will be there to prepare for everything. Is it hard to anticipate what could happen?
Essentially what happens is I have a uniform prepared for pretty much any guy that was at spring training. And I try to anticipate player moves ahead of time. So every player that isn't with us has at least a jersey and 2 pairs of pants and 2 caps on the road. So when that guy comes up, I already have stuff for them. 9 times out of 10, if they're coming from Syracuse, they'll bring what they're wearing in Syracuse. If they prefer that, it still looks like it's in good shape, they'll wear those at least those pants. And jerseys are obviously specific to us.
Is it easy if you have Syracuse, Brooklyn, Binghamton close by with you? Does that make it easier for you or does it make any difference?
I don't think it makes much of a difference. The players still get here when they get here. The advance notice is, usually sufficient enough where I can be prepared ahead of time. And I always, like I said, I've always tried to be prepared ahead of time where I just have to take it off a rack or take it off of a shelf and put it in a locker.
Do you remember going back, was the one what your biggest challenge was? Trade or something came, any circumstance that was tough to deal with? Are there any 1 or 2 things that, how about going back to Cespedes trade?
Right.
That came late and you was there the next day, you had stuff for him,
We're very fortunate. We have a place called Stitches in Whitestone that can basically knock out anything I need in about 30 minutes.
Really?
So if I got told at 4 o'clock that I had a player coming, and they were going to be there at 5, I could run to Stitches with a uniform and get it sewn.
Kevin, how did you first get into this business? Look at when I was full-time peer, I always liked to hire somebody who worked in the minor leagues, paid his dues, great work ethic. You worked in Nashville, Dunedin, Florence, Knoxville, Auburn. Not exactly, whatever. But I mean, the state is sticking with it. You and then you paid your dues. Right. We are now.
Right. For those that don't know, Auburn is Auburn, New York,
Right.
which is 20 miles west of Syracuse.
Syracuse. Yeah.
Yes, I am. My father was a groundskeeper at the ballpark.
Right.
Used to bring me to the ballpark. On the odd games, I would bat boy, when I was younger than 10. And then 10, 11, I started bat boying all the time. That was in 1975. And we were a Phillies farm club back then. In 77, 78, I started doing the clubhouse as well. And here I am, a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, basically doing laundry every night for 25 people. And it just kind of progressed from there. I met people later on in the early 80s that got jobs at other clubs that called me up and said, hey, do you want to come work for us? And it just kind of snowballed from there. I went from there to Florence, South Carolina. I worked there for a year. I met the trainer of the team there, also a Blue Jays farm club. He asked me to go to Kinston, North Carolina. And then he ended up getting promoted to AA, which was Knoxville. So I stayed in Knoxville for 4 years. I went from there to be the minor league equipment manager for the Toronto Blue Jays down in Dunedin in '89. And then I started my ascent, I guess, through the AAA ranks. I went to Nashville for a year. And then from Nashville, I went to Tidewater, which became the Norfolk Tides. And that's kind of how I got into the Mets organization.
You worked with Dave Roosevelt. Right?
I did.
Dave was one of my favorite guys. I remember every time he used to go down there, had a box of Twinkies at his desk.
He had a lot of things in his desk.
He had a box of he had yelled to, but I don't want to ask you about the major league players.
Right.
Growing up, was there a favorite minor league guy who you gravitated, who was nice to you? Yeah, not necessarily players, because I don't generally say I have a favorite player. But going back to Dave Rosenfield, he was one of my favorite people in the game. When I first started there, he wasn't exactly a teddy bear, but he ended up being one. He became like a second father or grandfather to me. And I was there for 12 years. And he really did everything he could to make me successul. Did you run into David right?
When David was pre-draft,
Right.
They brought him in for a pre-draft workout. So that was the first time I actually ever met him and got my first sense of him.
How has it been moving up in the system? Is it gratifying getting to know the players who are the guys that do the minor league?
Right.
Is it great to see him? You keep contact with him?
Yeah. There's a lot of guys that actually have my number that reach out to me all the time. I'm still pretty friendly with a lot of guys. You'd be surprised that the names in my phone of players that I've had over the years.
You were special. One of the things you really helped us with is you were a big Willie Mays fan, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, that was the icing on the cake. Going back to the old time, at a game with the sun and everything.
Yeah.
Did you ever interact with Willie at all?
I've met him several times in San Francisco. He goes to the ball. He used to go to the ballpark quite a bit there. And Mike Murphy, who was the clubhouse manager for 50-something years there, he's obviously, him and Willie are very tight. And he would always come down and meet Willie. Willie's down in the clubhouse. Yeah. And so, through Mike, I would go down and say hi to Willie. And but that's really the extent.
Kevin, how guys traded? I mean, do you have to? I guess you have to come to contact with Billy, the GM, to talk about numbers. I mean, we don't have that many numbers. I'm tired of that. Does that make it easier for you, or
we're actually running out of numbers?
Really?
Believe it or not, yeah. I think there's out of 100 possible numbers, we're utilizing 85 of them all together right now. I think there's 15 or somewhere in that neighborhood that are not being used right now. So it becomes a challenge because, again, guys come to spring training, they get assigned numbers, or, we'll call ahead and say, hey, you wore number whatever, or when you were at this team, do you still want that number? And so we'll go through and try to piece it all together before spring training. And then, whatever's left, try to hold on to a few numbers in case we acquire players and whatnot.
I remember when I was doing Pure, Chuck Wendell 90, I was the only one with a number like that. Now, There's 71, 72, 73, 74.
This is because I think during the COVID years, we had to have uniforms prepared ahead of time for a lot of players. And people don't understand, like when guys come in, like, where are you going to go to get uniforms made?
Yeah.
All the shops are closed. All the sewing places are closed. And I sew personally, and I've sewn thousands of jerseys in my career. But, during COVID, it wasn't like you can just run somewhere and get it done. So I think me and a lot of the other equipment guys, we basically got a lot of stuff made ahead of time, and then we traveled with it. I mean, I think I had upwards of 40 guys in for uniforms.
Like the Gumstick is 85, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was what I was crazy. Maybe like one or two guys maybe got to the 70s, like a bullpen catcher or something. But never like it is now.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's all over the place now, and every team has the same thing. So a lot of the trend now is that coaching staffs are getting moved into the 80s and 90s to release. Traditionally the Mets coaches back from day one were always in the 50s because you didn't have anybody beyond 50 that was a player. So the coaches were always 51, 52, 53. And so I've tried to keep that tradition as much as I could. Sometimes it's harder to do because you've got guys with major league time that are coaches now that want to wear their major league number, and we try to accommodate that. But
I'm going to talk bobbleheads with you. I'm going to used to have. How many bobbleheads are in there? You collect?
Yes, the team has them now. They're on loan. I think they were cataloged during this off season. I think we're up to 600 right now, and I still have probably 30. My probably one of my favorites came from San Francisco. It's a Jerry Garcia.
You don't have just baseball guys, right?
No, well, it was through the Giants, but that's probably one of my favorite ones. I think it captured him perfectly, and it was a limited edition on top of that. And then there's a couple that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but I know there was 3 total that I really, really liked, and the Jerry Garcia one was definitely one of them.
I know a lot of equipment managers do that. Who is it, Pete?
In Houston, Steve Perry.
Right.
He probably had more than I did, but the club bought his because they created a bobblehead museum in Houston. So the club actually basically paid him for them. And then in Los Angeles, Mitch Poole had a ton. And he had like little tiny ones, the big, the old Nodders from the 60s. He had a very extensive collection, and I think the Dodgers ended up getting those as well for their bobblehead.
How do you get from other clubs? You just ask, or
I don't go in looking for them, but once everybody hears that I collect bobbleheads, it kind of like there's usually a pile waiting for me, and then I reciprocate because I know some guys do that. So it's kind of a trade thing, really. But I don't actively call around to teams and say, "Hey, I need bobbleheads." But for the most part, it's there's a small circle of us that kind of trade with each other.
Big movie fan, right? You're in spring training stuff, the posters. What I forget already. What would the post you have in your office?
I have approximately 80 baseball specific movie posters. And they're all called one sheets. They're 40 inches by 27 inches.
Well, I read that many. Wow.
Yeah, I only have in my office in Florida, I think I have 15 up right now, and those are all the ones from the 40s and the 50s.
Really? What about in the 40s?
I know the ones in the 50s are like Kill the Umpire, Angels in the Outfield, the original. There's some from the 70s. I have the original Charlie Brown movie, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and all the characters are on the pitching mound in their baseball uniform.
How did you get into this part?
That came from another Clubhouse guy, Cy Byanak, who was a visiting Clubhouse guy in Cleveland. He had a ton of movie posters, and I said, wow, that'd be a great idea for decoration.
Yeah.
So I just started, when I was in AAA, I started acquiring posters. And again, I was in the minor leagues then, so I didn't have a lot of money to work with.
Where are they now? Where are the ones in none of the walls? I mean,
They're in tubes. Yeah. Yeah, they're in like cold storage in a closet in my house.
So I know being president of your avocations, ice hockey referee.
Yeah.
Did you with EHL, right?
The East Coast League and the American League.
Did you have any aspirations of maybe
Yes.
the EHL?
Yes.
What the
When I started, I played hockey from age 4 through high school.
Right.
I started refereeing when I was 12 or 13, doing the little kids. I became certified before I was 18, which back then was unheard of. Went to a camp up in Lake Placid for what's now called USA Hockey. There was 27 people invited.
Right.
Met some people that were looking for pro officials, and that was the Atlantic Coast Hockey League, which became the East Coast Hockey League. So I started working, and you know, back then those leagues were they were a little rough. If you've ever seen the movie Slapshot, you can pretty much equate that to that, yeah. And then it started to get cleaned up a little bit, and the East Coast League turned into a very good AA level hockey league. And so I worked that for a long time. I tried out for the American League, but then, with my baseball jobs, it was hard for me to kind of get into that league. So living at Norfolk at the time, the American League came to Norfolk. So the first call I think they made was to me to be one of the linesmen. There's usually 6 or 8 of us that are in the region that work games. So that's how I ended up in the American League. And then when I got hired by the Mets full time, I had to move to Florida. And then 2002 was my last game.
Just to about travel. I traveled 38 years. You travel a lot. People on the outside, it's a grind, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get in cities late, get to the ballpark early. Like on an average, how much before a game on the road will you get there?
9 times out of 10 for a 7-ish game, I'm there by noon.
So you're talking almost like 12-hour days, right?
At least. I mean, 7 o'clock games, usually over by 10. We usually leave the ballpark an hour and a half after the game.
Yeah.
By the time you get back, depending on where the hotel is, everything else, you can be there in 5 minutes, you can be there in 30 minutes. So yeah, I mean, you're not getting back to the room before midnight.
And you're eating out a lot of times not great. I mean, cigarette picking, but I mean, I did it for a long time.
Right.
I've done it a long time. It's not, people, the average fan, well, good, your travel regime, it's great. It's great, but it's not great.
Right. You're eating in the clubhouse, which is great. I mean, the food that's provided now is we've always been fortunate here. Our food here in New York has always been very good.
But rather
on the road, back when the individual clubhouses controlled the food, there was places that were better than others, and now the team controls all that. Our team controls that, so we order basically from local restaurants and then have it brought in. But yeah, for the most part, the food is a lot healthier now. For me, I'm kind of a picky eater. So, like if I don't eat, I'll eat room service. And me and you have had the Weston cheeseburger about 1 million times.
Wish I had $1 for every cheeseburger I had work for me. And the best thing is when you go on the West Coast and you try to see and your phone will ring at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is 5 o'clock back east.
Right.
That's another thing. You don't get a solid 8.
We just went through that. We went on the road right off the bat a couple of weeks ago. We were in Oakland, San Francisco, and LA, and I don't think anybody looks at the schedule and I might be sleeping right now. I'll hold off till noon to call.
Yeah, that's what what's the one biggest challenges in your job?
I think the biggest challenge is spring training. Personally, I think the most stress and effort that any of us put in is spring training, because you've already at the end of a season, a normal season, you've already started ordering for the following season. It's really just the grind of spring training. I mean, it's really 2 months of just solid 15-hour days, and then you got to absolutely, and then you have to go right into the season.
Right.
So like the last week or 10 days of spring training, you're already in season mode. For us, it's, all right, we got to get all the uniforms paired up. If anybody saw the video that the Mets did of the behind the scenes, like we have to do a measuring day almost the first or second day of spring training. So that's early February.
Right.
And those uniforms come in mid-March. So now we have to make sure that they all fit, that we got the proper sizes, the
Right.
right, everything, you know. So we have to go back through that whole process again and make sure everybody has everything, and then you get it all together. And so, you know, spring training for me, I think, is the hardest part of the job.
Right.
I you know, packing a truck, unloading the truck. I mean, you know, all that stuff is it's stressful, and you're tired. You know, at the end of spring training, you're tired, and now you got to go on a 7 or 8 day road trip, and you know, you don't really catch a break. I'm just now, I mean, basically catching my breath a month into the season.
Yeah. Well, listen, last time we were in a series, it was 15. Hopefully, came a little close last year. Hopefully, this will be the year you deserve another ring.
I'm hoping, yes.
Thanks for your time.
All right,
It's a
thank you.
pleasure here.
Thank you.
Thanks.